Oh, hello, Geo is with you. Well, I see the story of Poseidon did not leave you indifferent. I think it was only then that many realized for the first time what assholes the ancient Greek gods were in life. Stupidity, hypocrisy, sexual preoccupation, idiotic notions of justice. These are the qualities that, according to the ancient Greeks, possessed omnipotent beings who rule the world. And what about the gods of other nations? Today I propose to go, so to speak, to the cradle of civilization and see what the ancient Egyptians believed in. This country begins to take place at school in the 5th grade. But now you hardly remember anything except pyramids, mummies and pharaohs. And by the way, there was a lot of interesting stuff there. But since we have a myth and reality heading here, it means that I will not tell about the Egyptians themselves, but about their gods. To be more precise, about one of the most important deities of the great and terrible Set. Who was this dude with the head of an incomprehensible animal? Has he always been evil, and what was this evil expressed in general? It's worth starting with the fact that ancient Egypt existed for several thousand years, and during this time the mythology there managed to change several times. So if I talk about all this in detail, then the video will be boring stuffy. You don't need it, I don't need it. So I decided to focus only on the newest version of the legend. When there were already about 20 dynasties in Egypt. They survived the split, the attacks of the Greeks, and stopped building pyramids. In general, a lot of things happened, and their myths have acquired more or less stable features. For example, Seth finally turned almost into Satan, although initially in southern Egypt he was quite considered a good god and protector of Ra. Therefore, the image of Seth, which I will tell you about now, was formed in the society of completely different Egyptians, no longer the ones that built the Great Pyramids of Giza. Nevertheless, these legends are the most detailed, and people really believed in them, which means I don't see any problem taking them as a basis. Well, before I start, I'll remind you, 120,000 likes and the next issue will be released. And also do not forget to subscribe to my Telegram channel. There are constant announcements, reviews and communication. Well, let me remind you that I will not talk about Sets as about an epic hero, but as if it were a real being, with its own character, mistakes and divine stupidity. So what is the problem of the ancient world? There is no clean water, there is nothing to eat, the pharaoh raised taxes, and also, neural networks and cashback. A sudden transition, right? And all because we do not have these problems with you. Tinkoff Bank together with artist Genia Zubkov created the first Tinkoff Black debit card in tandem with a neural network. This multi-passport card expands the boundaries of what bank cards can look like, and at the same time opens the way to the universe of benefits from Tinks. And the benefits there really are the whole universe. Up to 15% cashback on 4 categories of spending, which can be selected every month. Up to 30% cashback for purchases from partners, and if you activate a Tinkoff Pro subscription, you will receive additional income of up to 6% per annum on the card balance. And they are also free transfers even to the card of other banks through the fast payment system. Well, my favorite is that cashback comes to the account in real rubles, not some kind of bonus points. By the way, as a gift to the multi-passport card, you will receive neurosticers, which you can glue on and change your avatar. Follow the link in the description to apply for a Tinkoff Black card and receive your alien cashback monthly on Earth. So, the first thing I want to talk about is, what is it that you, in fact, were talking about with this with your head? Why, if other gods are depicted with animal heads, then everything is clear there. Here's Ra, he has the head of a falcon. And what the hell is this? How did he say that at all? So, today we have the god of Egypt Seth as a guest. I wonder how you talk to this head. Well, the site, thank you for the honest answers. Good luck with your head. And this is suddenly not a sick fantasy of a priest under mushrooms, but a real aardvark beast. Such is an African mammal with the body of a pig and the ears of a hare. I would say that this miracle looks extremely unnatural. Oh well, where did Seth come from in the first place? Like ancient Greek mythology, the supreme gods of the Egyptians were also not representatives of the first generation of gods. But first there had to be peace. Where did people, animals, and trees come from on Earth? When did the sun begin to shine? Who lit the stars in the sky and placed the moon to replace the sun at night? What awaits a person after death? These questions have worried people at any time and in any civilization. And how did the Egyptians answer them? And it seemed to them that nature, stars, plants and even mountains are living beings. And not just alive, but also with superpowers, which, if anything, can be used for the benefit or harm of people. So it's better not to offend them once again. And the Egyptians imagined the gods themselves as superheroes. Well, literally, like mutants from the X-Men. Just ordinary dudes, but very strong sorcerers. They can even be killed with a very strong desire. And the first gods appeared from the Great Lake. Like, there used to be one solid world ocean, but there was no air and temperature. A very strange concept. Well, yes, the Egyptians, of course, did not understand modern physics, so they can be forgiven. In short, after many, many thousands of years, when nothing in the world was changing, the waters suddenly bubbled, and the great god from Umra emerged. He looked that there was nothing around, and decided to do everything. He took off over the ocean, cast a spell, and that's how the first land appeared. I flew from the Umra over my creation and was sad that I could not boast to anyone, which means I need to create an audience for myself. So he sat down like that, blew, spat and created the god Shu and the goddess Tifnut. But he forgot that he also needed to create light. I can't see a damn thing. Therefore, both new gods were instantly lost. Creator of the world, my reverence. But that's not all. Ra, because of his stupidity, fell into such a panic that he could not think of anything better than to tear out his eye and send him in search of the missing. This eye suddenly lit up and began to search for the gods, like the eye of Sauron. And, of course, I found it. The slave was so grateful for his own eye that he stuck it in his forehead. And since then, this eye seems to have its own will, can notice enemies and burn them literally with laser beams. As you understand, it's not for nothing that I said that the Egyptian gods were superheroes. In general, the god Shu married Tefnut and they gave birth to two more gods. Hebe is the god of the earth and Nut is the goddess of the sky. That is, it was already like the third generation of gods, but as you might have noticed, Seth was still not among them. Patience, everything will be soon. In the meantime, I want to make an important remark. Unlike the Greek gods, the Egyptian ones did not try to overthrow each other at every opportunity. And in general, they lived quite peacefully. Geb and Nut loved each other so much that in general they always went everywhere only in an embrace and gave birth to thousands of stars. But their relationship with the children was strange. Every morning, Chickpeas opened her mouth and swallowed her children. However, unlike the Greek mythology of Kronos, every night she gave birth to them back. But nevertheless, her husband at some point got tired of enduring it and decided to punish his wife. But it didn't work out. Their dad came, Shu, said, "Are you a moron or something?" The children, damn it, don't disappear anywhere. They die, they don't complain. In general, since you are such a fool, then try to live separately from your wife for now. Shu waved his hands and made a terrible hurricane that tore the sky from the ground. Well, along the way, all sorts of islands appeared there, mountains, rivers, continents and so on, and people began to settle around the world. Oh, yes, people. Somehow I completely forgot about them. This is not surprising. Among the Egyptians, the appearance of people is devoted to quite a little space. They are being molded out of clay with their left heel by some far from the main god, between breakfast and dinner. And in principle, no one cares about people there at all. In the age of the elder gods, they are treated like some kind of insects. They don't even demand to worship themselves, but they run around there, tweet something, well, let them run, don't care at all. And it is all the more surprising that this time is considered by the Egyptians to be the golden age. What is his gold? It's unclear. The Egyptians themselves thought that it was a time when the gods lived side by side with people on the same earth. And the god Kep was not just a god, but actually the king of Egypt. This went on for several more decades, and then Ra took offense at his granddaughter, the goddess Chickpeas. Why? Unknown, but very much. So much so that he came up with a curse. From now on and forever they condemn you not to give birth to children and not on any of the 360 days of the year. And since the word of the supreme God is the law, so it turned out. Here you may have noticed that I said 360 days a year. Yes, the Egyptians thought that initially there were just so many days in the year, but then everything changed, and here's how. By the way, if it wasn't for this event, I wouldn't be telling you about Seth right now. He just wouldn't have been born. In short, well, of course, I was shocked. Apparently she didn't have enough of the thousands of children she swallowed every morning. She wanted more. Out of desperation, she turned to Thoth, the god of wisdom, saying, "Is there any way to replay this?" He replied that the word Ra is the law, but there is one way. Don't be sad, sister, everything will be fine now. The timekeeper then was the moon. She was constantly hanging out alone in the sky and bored. He flew to her and said, "Let's play checkers." "Well, I don't know, maybe not checkers, but some other similar ancient Egyptian game, it's not that important. It is important that he offered to play for money. And since Luna didn't have any money, he offered to play for a while. What is worth taking away from each day for a few minutes, no one will notice. Lung agreed and of course lost. And then it turned out that everything was bad not only with checkers, but also with mathematics, because the lost time was enough for 5 whole days. He replied that, "They say, I don't know anything, a bet is a bet. So the lunar year will now be shorter, and I will add my 5 days to the solar year. And since then, the lunar year lasts 355 days, and the solar year lasts 365. And most importantly, the curse of Ra did not extend to the new 5 days. In principle, nothing prevented him from cursing these, but he seems to have been not only the god of wisdom, but also arrogance. He declared that he was giving these days to the greatest god of all, Ra. Well, it would be strange if Ra cursed the days that were dedicated to him. That's how the goddess Nud got 5 whole days a year to give birth to new children. And she gave birth to 4 more. On the first day, a beautiful boy was born, and they named him Osiris. His first cry was so loud that the earth trembled. I don't know about you, I would definitely be scared of this. But the gods told people that a great king who does good had just been born. So everyone is happy now. But we didn't have to rejoice for a very long time, because 2 days later our hero of today finally appeared, a small, evil and ugly baby Seth, with fiery red hair and red eyes that looked at the world with hostility. Seth's birthday immediately began to be considered unlucky in Egypt. Even after many millennia on this day, the Egyptians tried not to make any important decisions. That's also a joke. Here you will inevitably harbor a grudge against the whole world, if everyone considers your birthday a cursed day.
I was born and now everyone will be considered not happy. And where is it now?
Along the way, we'll have to avoid important decisions on his birthday. Well, on the 4th and 5th days, 2 more daughters, Isis and Nephthys, were born to Chickpeas, whom, according to divine laws, the brothers will take as wives. Many years passed, and the old gods began to age. Yes, think about it, unlike the eternally young Greek gods, the Egyptians' gods could grow old and decrepit. The great mighty time became quite bad, people stopped honoring and fearing him. Geb, too, could no longer rule the country. So the elder gods decided to retire from people to heaven and hang out there on retirement for their own pleasure, ride a sunny boat, drink cocktails and do not deny themselves anything. And the kingdom over Egypt was handed over to the grown-up Osiris. Wise, courageous and meek. Well, just a real saint, not a king. And now let me tell you what kind of kingdom he got. Let me remind you that the Egyptians consider this a golden age. So during the golden age, people were wild and dark, ate some roots, caught small animals and ran away from the big ones in fear. And if a drought hit Egypt, they would start eating each other. And also people did not know medicines and died from the simplest diseases. They had no written language, no laws. And this is a damn golden age. Death, disease, cannibalism. The question is, was this Geb such a good king if he had not a kingdom, but a stupid bunch of savages? Osiris decided that something needed to be changed. It got to the point that he had to explain to people which acts were good and which were evil. Osiris taught people to find medicinal plants, sow wheat, water it with water from the Nile, and the Egyptians even had writing and astronomy. People finally understood why they needed gods at all, and began to glorify Osiris and build temples to him. There was only one dude who liked it all, Seth. He simply hated Osiris since childhood, and now he has also become jealous. In fact, the nature of this anger was not entirely clear. Here Seth acted more like a villain from classic old movies. He's bad because he's bad. And all he did was just come up with a plan to get the throne of Osiris for himself. Perhaps Seth was the only straight evil god of all the others in Egypt. This is also its important difference from the ancient Greek. There the gods behaved mostly like assholes, but none of them was straight evil in the flesh, but Seth was straight finished. But his plan was constantly hindered by the wife of Osiris and Sid. She was the goddess of magic for a reason, she could cure any diseases and destroy evil intentions. Spoiler alert. In fact, this was a strong exaggeration. Sometimes Isis showed herself far from being the best doctor in the world, but more on that later. And Siri celebrated 28 years in Egypt, which by divine standards is nothing at all. And that's when Seth waited for his chance. And Sidi needed to go somewhere for a long time, and Seth came up with a brilliant plan. Well, more precisely, the plan is actually stupid, which only a complete idiot could buy into. But the naive Osiris probably had a small mind too. This, by the way, in the course, is the general rule of all ancient gods. Despite their super strength, their level of intellectual development was rarely higher than that of a 15-year-old teenager. In general, Seth sent his minions to the palace of Osiris at night so that they would take the measure of the sleeping god, and then Seth ordered to make a gorgeous sarcophagus by this measure. Well, that is, in fact, a coffin. And then he sent messengers to Casiris with an invitation to come to his feast. They say he has forgotten all the old grievances and is calling his dear brother to hang out together while the wives are not at home. And Siri gladly agreed and even dismissed the servants and guards. With this one, his friends vied with each other to tell the Tsar how awesome, wise, and beautiful he was. And then Seth casually said that look at what a beautiful coffin was made for me here. It sounds like some kind of surrealism, but a bunch of gods seriously began to admire the coffin during the feast, with words like that this product is truly worthy of the gods. The game is simple. And then everyone started begging for it to give them this sarcophagus. To which Seth replied that okay, there is no bazaar, but he is ready to give the coffin only to someone who will have it perfectly in size. Are you savvy? And the gods really started to lie down and try on. Ophiget, of course, the ancient Egyptian Cinderella was found. And of course, since Seth specially made the sarcophagus for Osiris, it suited him perfectly. Seth said happily, okay, bro, you've won, your coffin, and slammed the lid shut. His henchmen ran up, boarded up the coffin and wrapped it with ropes to the pile, and then in the dark they carried it to the Nile and threw it into the water in the middle of the river. There are, as it were, questions for Osiris, too. Somehow a powerful god could not cope with the sarcophagus. And what was his strength at all? As I understood it, Osiris in Egypt was, in the process, the only god who never demonstrated any miracles. Well, in short, the coffin was thrown into the river, and the river took it somewhere into the sea. After that, the joyful Seth went to the palace of Osiris and declared, sitting down, that he was now the king here, and she should get out of here altogether. And where he made the body of Osiris, he will not tell people to forget it as soon as possible and get used to the new order. By the way, this story reminds me of the Lion King. Set Vidi, really clean scar. In general, what he did as a king is unclear. He didn't seem to harm people, he didn't order anyone to be killed, but just sat on the throne and that was it. At this time, Isis went to look for her husband's body. She was the goddess of magic, so she created a powerful sorcery and found out that the coffin with Osiris landed on the shore somewhere near the city of Bibo. But while she was walking there, a tree grew over the coffin, and the local king ordered to cut it down and make a column out of it for his palace. When Isis got to the place, she burst into tears that she had found nothing. Strange why she again could not conjure and understand that the coffin with Osiris is literally a couple of kilometers away from her. As if it is not clear. Anyway, the weeping goddess was caught on the shore by the queen's maidservants, but they did not understand that it was a goddess. Even when she combed their hair and they suddenly became extraordinarily beautiful. Like, well, it happens, it's not surprising, we all suddenly become beautiful. They told about the strange stranger of the queen, and she ordered to bring her to the palace. She, too, was struck by the kindness of this woman and decided to keep it. Yes, not just leave, but instructed her to feed and raise her son. So Saida began to live in the palace as a servant, unaware that the body of Osiris was nearby all this time. Isis took care of the boy, fed him magically. Her milk stood out right from her fingers. In gratitude for the kindness of the queen, she decided to make her son immortal. To do this, Isis lit a magic fire at night and put a child in it. Again, it sounds wild, but the fire was magical and did not harm the boy. This continued until one day the queen accidentally noticed an unusually light in her son's room. She walked into the room, saw the baby on fire and was so fucking freaked out. She screamed, called the guards and in a panic ordered to seize the villain. Well, strictly speaking, the normal reaction of a caring mother. But Isis in this situation behaved like a kick-ass. How strange. Let me remind you that before that everyone described her as a meek, polite and kind woman. And then she went straight into a rage, killed the guards with one look and transformed into a goddess with a solar disk over her head. And then she yelled at the queen, saying, "How dare you stop me?" Although damn, what else could she do? She's actually the queen here. She sees her maid trying to burn her son and calls the guards. What's wrong? Nevertheless, this quite understandable reaction for some reason wildly angered Isis. She just ran over a woman. They say, "I wanted to make your son immortal, but now nothing will work out because of you, so it's all your fault. VO, hold your son. As you can see, he is unharmed." Then Isis accidentally touched a column. It broke in half and the sarcophagus with Osiris fell out. Isis saw him and screamed loudly in grief. But she screamed so loudly that the king's son, about whom Isis had just said that he was unharmed, could not bear the scream and died. Awesome. In general, the moral of this fable is this: do not let the gods into your house. They will find 100% what they will be offended about and how to take revenge for it. In general, this is how the next chapter began. The corpse of Osiris was found. Now it was necessary to understand what to do with it. Isis hid the sarcophagus in the Nile Delta and went to consult with her sister Nephthys. Nephthys, by the way, was Seth's wife, but ran away when he killed Osiris. She also had a son, Anubis. But everyone knew that it was actually the child of Osiris, not Seth. As you understand, no one loved Seth at all. It is clear that he was so angry. Isis had a desire to bury her husband with dignity, but Seth accidentally stumbled upon the coffin while hunting. And for some reason he was so frightened by the sight of his dead brother that he cut his body into 14 pieces and scattered it all over Egypt. He was afraid that Isis would decide to use her powerful witchcraft and revive her brother. Although in fact she just wanted to bury him. But now, looking at how Seth abused the body, I decided that reviving it wasn't such a bad idea. Nuts, reeds. Come in. Fresh cane. Dear, who do you want to sell it to? There's no one here, it seems. So I went there and went there. There's no one there either. It's better to sit here, safer. I asked the gods for help. I hope the great RA will hear me. I see, I think I have a better option. MTS Marketer is an advertising platform for attracting and retaining customers based on big data. MTS. What is this? What will help you find customers? Big Data MTS allows you to show ads only to the audience that is most likely to be interested in your products and services. And this means less spending on advertising, higher efficiency. You set up geolocation, demographics, and even the interests of the audience yourself. There is also the widest list of tools. SMS mailings, cache notifications, banners on websites, advertising in social networks. And all this is based on a unique subscriber base of 65 million people. MTS Marketer has a nice and intuitive interface. And, by the way, it is convenient to use it even with a smartphone. Each of you can launch an effective advertising campaign with the MTS Marketer platform. Try it. They say you can buy cane from you. Give me 10. And here in history we have another god, Horus. This is generally one of the main gods of Egypt, and almost half of the mythology was based on his confrontation with Seth. Mountains. This is the son of Osiris and Isis, who was born after the murder of his father. That is, if you count it that way, he was the great-grandson of Ra. In general, this Gore proposed an awesome idea: how to revive Osiris. You just need to assemble his body in parts and lubricate it with medicinal herbs. How simple everything turns out to be. My God, what are you doing? I'm trying to revive the chicken. Well, in general, let's not insert it twice. I'll tell you a little about Gore's childhood. Not about everything, but only about a couple of moments. You remember how I said at the beginning that his mother was Isis, who was considered the best doctor in the world, able to cure anything. So here are two cases. The first one, once on the island where little Gore grew up, such a hot wind blew that the child literally caught fire. I don't know what the temperature was there and why no one and nothing but Horus caught fire anymore, but Isis came running and extinguished the flames. Milk from your breast. That's for sure a miracle elixir. And the second time little Horus stepped on a scorpion and almost died. It is also interesting, of course, that a scorpion bite can kill a god. But what's even more interesting is that Isis was rushing back and forth and had no idea how to help her son. She didn't even realize that it was all because of the bite at all until God came and explained to her what was what. Too much for me, a great doctor. In the meantime, Horus was growing up and Saida, with the help of Thoth and Nephthys, was collecting the body of Osiris piece by piece. And, apparently, Seth didn't try very hard to hide them, because the search took only 12 days, and then Gore decided that he was an adult enough kid to avenge his father, and challenged Seth to a duel. It turned out, to be honest, a so-so. Seth won by 1 wicket. He chopped the mountains into pieces, tore out his eye and scattered it on the ground. What's not clear here is why he was so steamed up with Osiris and the sarcophagus. But like superheroes in comics, Egyptian gods never die to the end. Therefore, the mountain could be revived. He collected 64 severed parts all over the world, and then fused them together so that not even scars remained. A miracle, no other way. The question is, what could he not do with Osiris as well? After all, there were only 12 or 14 parts, it's much less. He made only one exception. He did not put the torn eye back into place, but told the mountain to go and feed this eye to the corpse of Osiris so that he would come to life. Oh, to be honest, I don't understand how this magic works at all. But it works. Osiris actually swallowed the eye and rose from the dead. Here, as it were, the fairy tale ends. The king has returned. He was supposed to take his rightful place in the palace, but for some reason he and the other gods didn't care about it. So the mountain had to go again to fight with a Set for the honor of body. This time the battle lasted 10 days and for a long time no one could win. At some point, Seth knocked out Gore's eye again. In general, judging by the myths, the Egyptians had some kind of unhealthy fixation on the eyes. And Horus managed to castrate Seth and deprived him of half of his strength. That's how good one. Horus brought the one connected with this one to his father, the gods began to sing and dance and threw a huge celebration. Osiris nobly handed over the throne of Egypt to the mountain and went to rule in the afterlife. But Seth, of course, was not satisfied with this. Otherwise, how would he be a god of evil? Naturally, it was necessary to come up with some dirty trick. If it didn't work out by force, then it is necessary by cunning. And as if nothing had happened, he turned to the higher gods with the claim that, in fact, according to the law, he should be the king. That is, he killed his brother, killed his son, who really then resurrected, showed in every possible way that he was twirling divine laws in one place, and then, as if nothing had happened, he comes and demands the throne for himself. There is no Osiris type, is there? That's right. Well, I don't care that he was revived there, the main thing is that he refused the throne and went to the underworld, which means I am the next in seniority. Still logical, and the gods really gathered for judgment. At first, everyone said that Horus should become king, but then old Ra was indignant that no one was interested in his opinion, and began to drown for Seth. An argument broke out. Kor was outraged that the gods had gone mad if they thought that power could be given to Seth after all he had done. Seth threatened to kill everyone here if he wasn't recognized as the heir. Well, then the gods did not come up with anything smarter than how to solve the case with a duel. God-level justice. It made even less sense than in a human trial by combat. At least there was a logic that God would definitely help the one who is right. And which gods were supposed to help if other gods arranged a duel among themselves? Well, there were specific concerns here. He was afraid that his mother would help the mountain, so they decided to arrange a duel on a remote island. And the boatman was ordered not to transport anyone like Isis. It seems to me that the protection is clearly weak, if we are talking about the most powerful sorceress in the world. Isis, of course, turned out to be not a fool, turned into an old woman and approached the boatman in this form. He says, "Take me to the island. I'm taking food to my son, who grazes cows there." The boatman resisted, saying, "Well, as if no woman was ordered to be transported, similar to Isis," she replied, "Do I look like her? Look how old and poor I am. Well, here's another argument for you, a golden ring. Not suspicious at all. A poor peasant grandmother offers gold in order to bring some bread to the shepherd. Well, and what did the boatman do? Of course, he agreed and moved Isis to the island. There she went towards the feasting gods and turned into a beautiful girl along the way. Seth saw her and immediately fell in love. So what does a real god do when he falls in love with a mortal? Be sure to hit on her. Seth hid behind a tree, and when the girl was passing by, he made a dachshund, "Hey, girl, come with me, I'll show you to climb." To which Isis the picture wrung her hands and pushed such a speech, from nothing at all.
Don't call me great master. I was a shepherd's wife, and we had a son. My husband died, and my son took his father's cattle. Well, a stranger came, entered my house, drove my son away and took away his cattle. I ask you to stand up for my son, give him back his inheritance.
Seth, of course, was indignant and began to kick himself in the chest with his heel, saying what a nightmare. The villain must be urgently beaten with a stick and driven away. Then pretty Isis took her usual form and said with a laugh, "So beat yourself with a stick, you idiot. After all, it was a story about you." Seth wept with anger and ran to complain to the great Ra. Like what a horror, Isis was on the island and deceived him. "And I warned you." Ra replied that it was sad, of course, but the most we can do is punish the boatman who could not fulfill a simple request. But the kingdom is real along the way, you have to give the mountain, because you indirectly admitted it yourself. But from this point on, he once again refused to admit defeat and started trying to take the mountain on weakly. Like, did you decide to hide behind mommy's skirt? Are you afraid to fight me? And let's turn into two hippos and dive into the river. Whoever lasts longer underwater, that's the throne, yo. The city replied, "Fuck you, come on." They dived into the river, but Seth couldn't hold out that long. He swam somewhere in the reeds and surfaced so that no one could see him. He sat there, so he waited until Gore surfaced, and then crept up to him and tore out his eyes again. Yes, how much, damn, is it possible? Then Seth buried his eyes somewhere under the mountain and whistled back to the other gods, like hello, hello, are there still no mountains? Oh, how strange. So he probably lost the argument, got ashamed and hid somewhere. Of course, not everyone believed him. The goddess Hathor went in search, and found the blinded Horus under a tree. And of course, it also cured him instantly. In general, it seems that in Egypt they were able to treat vision in any way. This time Hathor just caught a gazelle, milked it with milk and flooded the mountain. Oh, in the eye socket. That's the whole recipe. My god, damn, and why is this? The grass didn't help, we need something stronger. When Seth's deception was revealed again, Rai gave him a direct, unambiguous hint. Good already, huh? Well, it's obvious that you can't win. But Seth continued to behave like an aggrieved teenager. He threw tantrums and demanded to replay everything all over again. Like, now let's build stone boats and swim a challenge race. Whoever wins is the king. Horus agreed again, but on the condition that this test would be the last. The fight was scheduled for the next day. Seth went to the mountains, broke off the top of the rock with a club and carved a huge rook out of it. And Gore decided to cheat this time. He built a boat out of wood, but plastered it with plaster on top to make it look like it was made of stone. The next day, of course, Seth drowned right near the start, and Gore calmly swam for himself. What did Seth do? Admitted defeat? Yes, of course, now. The mountain swam after the boat and began to yell that he would kill him. It looked more pathetic than scary. Seth is already really sick of being embarrassed. Horus calmly waited for him in the boat, and then took out a spear and clearly hinted that he was ready to pierce Seth with it to the very assholes. Seth's face instantly changed, if a face can be called that creepy muzzle. And he began to beg for mercy, and not from the mountain, but hurrah. Like look, great Ra, they want to kill your grandson. What a nightmare. Come and help me, or they'll pierce my ass. It's funny to hear this from someone who viciously killed another grandson of Ra. Oh well. Ra slowly rose from his chair and majestically asked Horus not to kill Seth in the ass and proclaimed him king of Egypt. There was also a funny moment that Horus got angry at Isis when she also asked not to kill Seth and almost kicked her out of the house. Here is such a noble hero. This is where the Egyptian legends practically end. Horus became the great king of Egypt, but the last of the gods who ruled the earth himself. Then, many years later, he ascended to heaven, and power in Egypt passed to people, and the golden age ended. However, I still didn't understand what was so golden about it. Well, what about Seth? Has he forgotten his villainies? Well, to be honest, Figs knows him. He didn't do anything wrong to people along the way, either during his reign or after. And when he finally lost, Ra took him to his heavenly boat and ordered him to arrange thunder so that people would fear and worship the power of the gods. Somehow, let's just say it's not solid at all for the most evil being in the universe. He looks more like a small-time, hysterical scoundrel. This is largely due to the fact that the formation of the cult of Seth took place in close connection with the development of the Egyptian state. It was literally made from separate pieces of various religions, which is why it turned out to be so caricatured. Well, not only he, but all the other Egyptian gods in general, when they are described as the kindest, wisest and most generous. And 2 pages later, they suddenly create some fierce game. Well, another feature of the myths of ancient Egypt is their completeness. I mean, here in the ancient Greeks, the biography of some god can be restored by a dozen very different stories about him. But the Egyptians are simple. There is such a Set. Once he killed Osiris, and then he got a pile of mountains on his shoulders. And now he's rolling in the sky with Ra. The end. What happened then? And there was nothing. The gods have left the earth, which means they are not doing anything else here. What can we say about the result? How much better or worse were their colleagues from ancient Greece with this company? But at least they were more chaste, they did not try to sleep with everything that moves, they did not meddle in the affairs of ordinary people and mostly only dealt with each other. But more precisely, in fact, only Seth tried to muddy the waters and seize what did not belong to him. So in terms of morality, the ancient Egyptian superbeings definitely win. But there is another problem here, because of their excessive correctness, little interesting can be unearthed about them. Basically, they just made pretentious speeches and tore each other's eyes out. Have a nice day. Don't forget to subscribe to my other social networks, I am actively developing them. Those who want to watch more content can subscribe to my TikTok, in which I release short interesting videos, and to the VKontakte community, in which a video about the first FBI Director Hoover has already been released. Plus, on the 4th of April, I will release a video there about the largest bank robbery in the Russian Empire. And many thanks to the subscribers of Busty and Patreon. Thanks for the support.